So let's talk a little bit about quantum physics. This is going to be a short introduction to keep expanding on what reality is. We've talked about the atom being 99.9999% empty, and this is matter, and they told us that this is matter too, but in reality the electrons and the protons, they are both matter and energy, meaning they have the ability to be either or. And the key factor between the potential of a cloud of energy and where it collapses as matter is going to be determined by the observer. So this is a horrible model that it was taught to us, because that's not really how it works. That all matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force. We must assume behind this force the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter. So it's like the, and I don't really know which other word to use, but matrix. Behind everything that we call real, which is not real, what exists behind it is what's real. But it's what we don't understand because our minds are made of matter, so they are only able to understand matter. Different story for our hearts. That can be called the universal mind, the quantum field, the ether, although if you tell a physicist that it's called the ether, he will laugh at you because he calls it the quantum field. But it's really the same thing, because they said that this is nonsense that was created by ancient civilizations, and they said it doesn't exist, and then they had to accept it that it exists, but they don't want to call it the ether because it will be like accepting defeat. So now they call it the quantum field, but it's really the same thing as the ether. We can call it vacuum, unmanifested nexus, unquantifiable singularity, zero-point energy, emptiness, the mind of the architect, or whichever we want to call it. Yeah. All right, now let's go back to what's real. That it's not real is everything that is matter, and it is basically ruled by 4 laws. And if you ask any physicist what has been the main work of physics in the past about 80 years, 90, is the unification of these four laws, because every atom is basically structured by these laws. So if we're able to control these laws or use them to our advantage, we will basically be able to create matter. So now let's imagine that if I truly know how to use these 4 laws, then I can create, let's say gold, because I can put together the right atoms, right? So they say that once we understand the unification of these laws, we will be able to control reality. But they're talking about reality outside of us, not the reality inside. The theory is called string theory, and it's basically the unification theory. Now this matters to them because they're all about matter, what's real, and they want to change what's out there, matter, the things out there. For us that we want to change things in here, there is 4 laws, 4 different quadrants of and it's already going on. For me, the equivalent of the strong, and actually I didn't even explain it, so let me go back. A strong nuclear force is what keeps, so let's go back to the atom then. I should have put this together. What keeps the nucleus all together is the strong nuclear force. Because if you think about it, in the nucleus we have a proton here and a proton here and a, am I saying that right? Proton, yeah. So let's say this is the nucleus. Now, what do we know from charges? What happens when I do this? They repel each other. So how can this be possible? And it is only possible through the strong nuclear force. Keeps them all in place. And then we have a negative force here because this is an electron. So if this is the nucleus, the electron is here. And what do we know from this charge and this charge?
They'll hold each other. They'll attract each other.
Oops. They'll attract each other. A negative plus a positive, they attract each other. So why is this electron not coming into the nucleus? Because of the weak nuclear force. So there is the two forces there. And then there is two more. Electromagnetic force, which is the field that arises from the movement of the electron, which is quite a horrible explanation, and I'll get to that point. And then the fourth one is gravitational, which nobody understands. And they talk about gravitons and things like that, but we have no clue. So anyway, they like to say that they understand the gravitational force, but not really. The weakest of them all, which one do you think it is? It sounds like, yeah, it sounds like weak. No. It is the gravitational force. Is the weakest one up. But if I fall from 10 feet up, it doesn't feel too much like it's weak force, right? I mean, it's very, very, very strong. But yet, it is the weakest one of them all. Then is the weak nuclear force, then is the electromagnetic force, and then the strong nuclear force. So electromagnetic force, not only it's embedded everywhere, but it's one of the strongest ones. So when they say, how can a magnet help me or my emotions or my illness? It's just because they don't understand that they are made of atoms, and that the relationship between this and this is all electromagnetic. So now, for me, the importance is not about how to unify the laws of physics because I want to change matter outside. For me is, how am I going to unify my forces so that my reality, the one inside of me, changes? I think, like we talked about the toxic masculinity, sending the world into a toxic waste dump. I don't need to control things outside, because the more we control them as humans, the more damage that we do to them. So I came here to learn how to control what goes on in here, inside, right? So for me, I compare the strong nuclear force to thoughts. I compare electromagnetic force to emotions. I compare the weak nuclear force to words, and gravitational force to actions. I think it's a waste of time to try to unify the strong nuclear force, the electromagnetic force, the gravitational force, and the weak nuclear force, because that's all about matter. And instead of that, if I work on the unification of these four, I will be able to create my own reality. So instead of being able to create gold out there, I will be able to create gold, but in here. So these four things, to me, are the key to everything that my reality will be, including health. If I am sick, somewhere in here, I am incoherent. I am thinking one thing, but I am saying another thing or doing another thing, right? I think, well, I want to eat healthy, but then my actions are not a reflection of that. There is an incoherence there, right? So every illness can be traced back to an incoherence between these four forces. Now, the thing about this is that I don't want you to think that, oh, I'm sick, that means I am incoherent. Well, we all are incoherent. That's why we're having this human experience. So it's a constant journey. Just because I'm not sick, it doesn't mean that I have evolved to be an angel. It's just that I'm in the process until my next illness will come, because I will inevitably will get sick, because it's a constant evolution.
So what if illness is like boom, 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 like in rapid occurrence?
Well, a lot of factors could play into that, but I would say that either your soul has a lot of hunger for evolution, or I have been ignoring all the small messages that have been come in the past 10 years or 20 or 40, or my family tree is sick and I need to heal it through my illnesses, because my illness will bring my conscious awareness to a new level. So that could be it. But just because, so everybody will die. It's just, it doesn't matter how coherent I am, I will die, because we're not here to not die, and we're not here to not be sick. Illness and death are just part of life. So my soul, let's say, when it signed a contract into incarnating in this world, it wanted to learn certain things. So I'm gonna get sick. I will get sick. That's just the nature of things, right? If I don't want to get sick, or if I understand the message, then it's more likely that I can evolve before my body has to scream out with infection or something, right? But that's because I'm constantly growing or evolving. There is a lot of areas in which we need to evolve, and just because a person is fit doesn't mean that they are healthy, because their emotional side might be horrible. Or just because a person is not fit and they weigh X amount of pounds, it doesn't mean that they're all sick. Maybe their emotional lives are quite healthy. It's just the physical that is not quite healthy. So we tend to think of health like, well, if they eat right and they do exercise, that's health. Well, that's part of health, but there is the emotional health, there is the mental health, the spiritual health, and we're all sick. Some are at a physical level, some at an emotional level, some at a spiritual level, but we're humans because we want to learn how to evolve, how to grow. If we want to polarize ourselves, which is illness, I will say that person is a criminal. But that's because I think of myself as
not a criminal.
As not as criminal, and everything in my life is just right. But I'm taking myself out of the equation of the criminal mind. So if for this I will love to use an example somewhere in an island in the Pacific. I'm not sure which one it is, but there is a tribe that or a community that they don't have, well, to begin with, if you look at all the ancient civilizations, they never had hospitals or prisons. It just didn't exist, because they understood that either health or lack of health and criminal activity was the sum of the collective consciousness. So if there is a criminal in my town, he is the fuse that blew up because of the collective consciousness of everybody else. If I see my neighbor and he has a beautiful horse and I have a weak old dying horse, I'm like, I want that horse. I'm not doing anything about it, but I'm thinking about it. So I'm creating this field of energy. And the other neighbor is thinking that about, I don't know, something else, his fruits, his trees, or his wife.
Yeah. I mean, that goes for like coveting a wife for like an object, but in particular, like when it comes to like perversions and stuff like that, that's kind of...
It's the fuse that blew up, because 100,000 men are thinking the same thing, not doing it, but thinking it. So they're building up this energy, and then there is this, let's call him a poor guy that grew up without a mother, without a father, in the street. He's the fuse that is going to blow up, and he is the criminal. And we tend to think, oh, he's horrible. When in reality, he's just the light that turns on. Check your engine. The light bulb is just the one that's saying there is something collectively that is hurting the whole.
We have so many fuses being lit.
Because we're all here being in a polarized state, thinking I am righteous or I am good, and is that person is a criminal. So the more, if I want to really help, I have to depolarize myself, and I have to understand that person is really me. Because if I was born with his DNA in his place, with his mother, father, everything, I would be drawing the collective consciousness. Yes, and I will be triggering that action. So, going back to this tribe, when a person committed a crime, they would immediately understood that was the warning light that the whole town, the whole tribe was doing something wrong. So they would bring the criminal into the plaza, and all the elders will get around and will ask for forgiveness to that person, because that person had to be the one that committed the crime in order for them to know that their collective consciousness was a mess. So they would ask for forgiveness, and then they would chant and dance around him to send all the love that they could to balance again, because he was just the poor fuse that got blown up because of this whole energy in the town. So that really helps us to understand that I'm not a victim. Even if a person comes and robs me, I mean, I'm not being a victim. I'm just being part of a collective issue, right?